Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good morning. I am Katusha Sotomayor, a journalist from Brazil. It is an honor to be with you at such a relevant and important meeting for IICA and its partners on this International Women's Day. Welcome, everyone that are joining us from at least 35 different countries of the Americas and Spain. IICA, with the support of the IDB and Microsoft, is today launching a report on digital literacy in rural areas. As a result of a partnership that has a big impact in the field and puts in the middle of public debate the importance of this subject matter. This is continuity of technical cooperation between IICA and a global funding entity and private sector in favor of rural population. In 2020, other documents show that there are almost 80 million people without any connectivity or inadequate connectivity. And on the International Women's Day, most are women, in fact. Studies on inequality, gender inequality, have shown the disadvantages of women in rural areas. IICA once again takes the lead and continues to work to drive connectivity in new studies and reports so that people can tap these digital skills for their personal and labor life. One thing that researchers and consultants that worked on the study highlight is that the availability of the internet is limited, but even more than that, the capacity to use the internet has not developed enough. So there is a clear need to better tap the potential of technology to increase productivity and income of those that need the most, the small producers. And which is one of the most important elements of IICA's mission. Connectivity and use will lead to better human development and must lead to progress and opportunities enrooting people in the rural areas. With this, now I offer the floor to the Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, IICA, Manuel Lutero, who has some opening remarks. Thank you. Welcome, Don Manuel. Yes, thank you, Katiuska. Good morning, everyone. If you allow me on your behalf, I would like to, first of all, warmly greet all women on International Women's Day. I would like to greet all the authorities present that are with us on such a special day, and particularly the Minister of Agriculture of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mr. Mustafa, whom I thank for his presence today. I am aware that he had an important activity at Parliament. Our colleagues from the IDB and Microsoft that have been fundamental to support the joint effort to present this report we will present today, as well as all IICA officers. To my right are the Deputy Director Lloyd Day, and to my left the Federico Villarreal, Technical Director, Director of External Affairs Robert Best, and the rest of the team. The publication of this report on digital literacy in rural areas is directly related to the historical mission of IICA, which is to support the efforts of its member nations in favor of rural agricultural development, and fundamentally with the necessary update of the institutional agenda according to the new scenarios. The agenda is focused on the new challenges, on hurdles to sustainable development, rural territories, and bridges that we must necessarily build between the rural and the urban world. Something that explains why technology and innovation are at the center of our technical cooperation endeavors. And IICA, that precisely in this area of science and technology, has the DNA, the raison d'etre, that is right at the core of this dear institution. At IICA, we have a continuous activity, ongoing activity, insistent, that only seeks to encourage that we have ever better quality policies focused on the long term and thus attract private investment, and through this means close this virtual circle by empowering the populations in our rural areas. This is a need for everyone, for individuals, for families, for organizations, for countries. For that reason, this is the second report we report together with the IDB and Microsoft, and that joins another one recently developed in collaboration with Oxford University, the IDB, and IFAD. This last document verified that rural women were the least connected part of the world, much less than men in the rural areas. And then we had another document, connectivity in Latin America and the Caribbean, a sustainable development in the areas, times of pandemia, basically where we showed that at least 77 million people in rural areas lack a connectivity with at least the minimum quality standards. This new report that we are bringing to you today focuses on the importance of developing digital literacy, because we coincide with IDB and Microsoft that it is a priority to bring attention to address the use of technology and the needs of training of those that live in rural areas. With the objective of full development of this group, we must reaffirm this today, particularly rural women that are the least connected in the rural world, and therefore those that are most distant from modernization processes. Let us imagine for a moment that there is a true revolution in the area of connectivity, and we could bring connectivity levels to the same level, for example, at that of European countries. Well, we would also see a big mass of producers, particularly family farmers, that since they do not have those digital skills developed, would continue to be marginalized from all these benefits that new technologies bring about today. And this subject matter is part of IICA's roadmap, our priorities, our desires, and IICA that has to think in order to act. And that is the virtuous circle that we are trying to implement. Allow me to show you some concrete examples here at IICA headquarters. In 2019, we launched the Fab Lab, the first Fab Lab for agriculture with the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Telecommunications of Costa Rica, which is a space for co-creation to, with digital technologies, try to help family farmers in that process of empowerment through the greater usage or more effective use of digital technologies. Another action that we feel very proud of at IICA and we are fully committed to is the partnership we have entered into with an NGO, which is called Precision Agriculture Development, PAD, a civil society organization co-founded by economy laureate Michael Dremer, and with whom we are undertaking concrete experiences. Initially in two countries, first of all Brazil, as well as, and then Colombia, with the new rural extension approaches using cellular telephony. An IICA that listens, that identifies priorities, that proposes and acts. In the context of the pandemic, due to the spread of COVID-19 and the isolation measures to try to limit contagion, what we perceive is that millions of people have modified their daily habits, and there's a very rapid need to digitize the work, education, even in market and commercialization, showing how mandatory and urgent this inclusion is. An inclusion where no one can be left behind or left out. So far, we have achieved significant awareness and action of the governments in favor of a pro-connectivity agenda, as we saw with the important presence of officers from different countries in the recent forum on digital divide that IICA organized to discuss the subject matter and to have a roadmap that will allow us to promote more and better changes. On this occasion, together with the IDB and Microsoft, we are taking another important step, talking about the adoption of digital skills in the rural population in Latin America and the Caribbean to address the problem of utilizing technology and digital resources that connectivity enables. We believe this is the perfect point in time to do so, given the availability of new technological resources and their incorporation into agriculture and the agri-food value chain, something that represents challenges and opportunities that rural areas must address to take advantage of this potential. With our producers fully enabled to use digital technologies, we are not going to advance in the objectives of sustainability, resilience, a social and environmental economy that is much more developed as the world is now claiming. This framework idea, as we are sharing with you today, is particularly important because we are only 6 months away from the Summit of Heads of State convened by the UN on agri-food systems. And this World Summit will be preceded by the Hemispheric Summit of Ministers of Agriculture of the Americas convened by IICA, where connectivity for rural inclusion will be at the center of all our discussions. I thank all that participated in this new report, knowing it is everyone's duty to bring down the new barriers that obstruct access of farmers to knowledge, which is decisive in order to improve production and income and to guarantee for their families and future generations quality of life, education, labor, and stronger roots in the rural territories that we so badly need. We are promoting digital literacy because we know it, we live it. To develop these skills will allow a quantum leap in the lives of people that live in the rural areas. From IICA, you will always find institutional commitment to work on these matters closely related to sustainable human development and to extend horizons for women, for youth, for men, obviously, for their families in the rural areas. Before ending, I thank all the team here at IICA for this humongous effort made to produce this report, which should not just be left on a shelf. It is fundamental that this be subject for discussions, search for consensus and awareness. Changes are mandatory and cannot be delayed. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Mr. Director General and Mr. Manuel Otero. Your words have been very important, giving the history of IICA and aligning it with the current agenda. And thank you for mentioning the forthcoming summit. Now, the Minister of Guyana from Georgetown will be mentioning Mr. Mustafa. Minister, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I must join with the Director General in extending warm greetings to all women around the world, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean, from His Excellency President Dr. Irfan Ali, the Government of Guyana, and the people of Guyana. Dr. Manuel Ortillo, the Director General of IICA, representatives from various other organizations that are present there at this forum. It is my privilege to be among this diverse group of participants at this important presentation and reports on connectivity and digital skills development in Latin America and the Caribbean that is being presented this morning. Rural digital inclusion is a priority now more than ever before and key to development in Latin America and the Caribbean region as we address the challenges in the agriculture sector that has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. There is an indisputable need to strengthen our agriculture research and technological innovation system. We must work together as a region to bridge the technological divide and move forward together, where no country is left behind. And in this initiative, I want to commend IICA for the role they have played over the years in moving countries forward in the agriculture trust to develop our food security and food system within our country. Transformation in our agriculture and food system will be evident at the level of technological innovation increase as the level of technological innovation increases in the region. Communications, operations, and transactions will be revolutionized, and we'll see the creation of smarter farms and more inclusive and transparent value chains. At the farm level, precision agriculture techniques can be used to improve management of crop and livestock system, while agricultural mechanized equipment can accelerate operations and increase efficiency. At the distribution stage, e-commerce and digital marketplaces provide virtual spaces in which to match sellers and buyers, lowering marketing costs and facilitating trade in agriculture inputs and outputs. In Guyana, despite several research challenges, there have been the establishment of a biotechnology laboratory at the National Agriculture Research and Extension Institute as efforts are made to work on crop improvement and enhance crop diversity. The Guyana Rice Development Board is currently working with the FAO on a digital enhancement program that will strengthen the rice production monitoring system. Recognizing the critical role of extension in rural economy, in 2021 we'll procure 255 tablets for crops and livestock extension officer to improve advisory and traceability system, which will allow for proper monitoring, more efficient data collection and management system and farm traceability. In this light also, I want to thank IICA for their role that they have played in providing agriculture extension apps for rural farmers across our country. Our country has 10 administrative regions, and we have a number of farmers who are living in various rural and hinterland communities. And these apps will help our extension officers to give real-life report to us at in the capital city. Also, I want to commend IICA for the government apps that will help ministers within the Latin American, the Caribbean to communicate and also develop communication and trade issue. So these roles that IICA are playing are very, very important roles to bring us together and develop this part of the hemisphere and ensure that we have food security. However, it is important to note that the ICTs can be highly complex and require proper training on their operation and maintenance. Rural farmers and other beneficiaries would require training and other assistance. There is need for specialized staff at the level of various ministries across the region in identifying agro-technological areas that will be able to train farmers. Also, there is need for consideration of subsidies and tax reduction for farmers to access the digital tools. Our government, the government of Guyana, will work to address this by not only securing low-cost technologies for primary processing in rural areas and also providing adequate training for these farmers in the rural areas. Being cognizant of the gender divide, particularly in rural areas, women must be given equal access to technology and skill training. As we celebrate International Women's Day today, I wish to recognize the important role that women play in the agriculture sector. As we address the gender gap, we'll work to empower rural women. Women can expect to benefit from initiatives that will develop their digital skills. Achieving the goals of efficiency, sustainability, resilience, and social inclusion that are identified for the transformation of food system is significant to Guyana as we strive to maintain our food security status. The government of Guyana, therefore, is committed to our role in supplying the economic, social, and institutional conditions that foster technological innovation, increasing connectivity, and provides equal access to digital technology. I wish to commend IICA for this initiative, which will highlight what has to be done to develop the digital skills of rural population so that technologies and innovations in rural areas will be effectively adopted and utilized. We expect that the findings and recommendations derived from this study will provide key information to guide policy and decision-making in Latin America and the Caribbean, both within the short and medium term. I therefore look forward to that presentation as we seek to embark on new areas of opportunity for the development of our rural population in this hemisphere. So once again, I want to commend IICA. I want to thank His Excellency, the Director General, for affording me this opportunity so that I can make these remarks. And I also want to highlight the role our IICA representative have been playing in our country and help us to promote.
Muchas gracias por tan destacado. Mustafa.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa, Minister of Agriculture of Guyana. And talking about the need to invest in innovation in a country that is a true productive reserve of our continent. Now it is my pleasure to present someone from Brazil, the Secretary of Family Agriculture and Cooperatives of the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Procurement of Brazil, Mr. Fernando Schwanke. Thank you, sir, for being here and welcome. Thank you, Katiusa. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Minister of Agriculture of Brazil and the Minister Teresa Cristina, I thank you for the opportunity to participate in the opening of this very important event for our continent. And I would also like to greet and congratulate all women in their day. The digital literacy in rural areas, an indispensable condition to bridge the divide in Latin America and the Caribbean. As Director General of IICA, Mr. Manuel Otero, mentioned it, and I would like to greet him now and thank him for his invitation. It is indispensable to include everybody, and that's the main challenge in our countries. I would like to congratulate IICA, IDV, and Microsoft for their partnership and the development of this report, which will be very useful for our countries. Supplemented what Sandra Braverman is doing, who is the Senior for Education in Latin America of Microsoft. That is Luciano Braverman, Senior Director of Education for Microsoft Latin America, and Ms. Maria Caridad Araujo, Head of Gender and Diversity Division of the IDV. And I would like to congratulate again all women for the International Women's Day. I would also like to greet the Minister of Agriculture of Guyana, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa, who is also joining us today during this opening session. It is very important to support the effort by all 34 members of IICA, countries members of IICA, in the development of the rural areas. This study also responds to the acknowledgement of a very needed institutional update of the new challenges and the barriers that exist to sustainable development in the rural areas of the Americas. In this specific case, we're talking about a second report that is being published in a very short period as a partnership between IICA, IDB, and Microsoft. And this shows us the true commitment that IICA has with digital agriculture and its importance for the future of rural production in our countries. I would like also to acknowledge as part of the agenda that is totally uh, united, that IICA is a clear ally of the Minister of Agriculture of Brazil in the development of projects that are very important for the agricultural sector in Brazil. When I visited Costa Rica and I visited IICA, I visited the Center for Interpretation of Agriculture of Tomorrow, CIMAC, and the Fab Lab. And the availability of new technological resources and their incorporation in agriculture and in the food, agri-food added value chain is key for emerging countries and particularly in the rural areas. In 2020, Brazil launched the technical program for digital outreach, and this was coordinated by our secretariat that has as its main objective to handle this topic in countrywide by communicating the information with quality. I believe that this is a challenge that is the size of Brazil, but we have to do it and we cannot delay it any longer. IICA will also be an important partner in the implementation of the PAD Alliance, Precision Agricultural Development, for the development of the northeast of Brazil that will be starting as of this year, and we will be able to include 100,000 farmers to start with the project. The importance of digitalization in rural areas is key in multifold in terms of development, content, and full exploitation. They require urgent attention. The support of digital technologies and their incorporation in agriculture are key to transform production practices and food consumption practices. Once again, I would like to congratulate IICA, IDB, and Microsoft for their work, and particularly Ms. Sandra Ziegler, the author of this report. And we are sure that this will contribute in the consolidation of public policies for the implementation and strengthening of digital agriculture in our countries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary of the Family, Agriculture and Cooperatives, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Procurement, Brazil. Thank you very much for your kind words. That this is something that is common for the Americas. And it is very clear from your words that this is a very important topic for Brazil. Now, we will listen to Luciano Braverman, the Senior Director of Education for Microsoft Latin America, one of the partners in this endeavor. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, Katioska, and welcome everybody. It is a great pleasure to be here sharing once again a very special moment with IICA and with so many important people in the sector. Director General Manuel Otero, Minister Zulfikar Mustafa, Secretary Fernando Schwanke, Maria Caridad Araujo, and all of you who are present here, I would like to greet you once again. It is great to be able to work together in this partnership once again in all these joint projects that we have with IDB in a topic that is so important and critical as that one of digital literacy and digital skills, particularly in rural areas. Before COVID-19, the world was undergoing something that was being seen as one of the largest revolutions of humankind. Some people even call it the fourth industrial revolution. Technological changes that were happening at an unprecedented speed, and this was taking place at home and workplaces, industries and retail, in the financial arena and in education as well as in education. We learned and we saw that basically the entire world needed to transform itself to face the challenges posed by digitalization, diversity, and widening the scope of all this. So this is something that we saw in the past year, where the acceleration, I love that word, the acceleration of the adoption of technology has had, is having, and will continue having an impact on in the workforce. Without a doubt, a direct need is being created in all job positions that is closely linked to technology. If I may share with you some key data with you, in most jobs, based on the research done, is that we have a very important technological component nowadays. And this is because technology is embedded in most jobs, regardless of the industry, and this includes agriculture, of course, in a horizontal manner. Many of these jobs are ever more technical, and they are closely connected to the cloud in a very important way. And both ministers mentioned that data and how to use data is also very important to make agriculture and the use of technology a much more specific kind of thing. We know that this is going to be important in all jobs, and right now we are having a big demand on data analysis. 33% of the demand for this kind of job positions are being fulfilled, and so this is generating a huge opportunity as well. And towards the future, we'll also need to address the challenge that many jobs have not been invented yet. So with this development of these new skills will definitely be important for these new jobs too. That will be key. I would like to mention two key aspects in terms of the development of digital literacy or skills. First, digital literacy and soft skills. Communication, collaboration, and creativity, critical thinking, computer-oriented thinking, and coding. Those are, I would say, the areas, the key areas to be able to face the big opportunity that we have in the future. At Microsoft, the development of these skills is a priority, and we link this with our mission, which is to empower everybody and all institutions in the world to be able to attain more. And I'm very glad and to be able to work together with IICA and the Inter-American Development Bank in this kind of projects, as they are an attempt to frame this opportunity that we have in our future. Thank you, Director General. Thank you, Sandra, for your amazing work. And it is a pleasure then to be able to join you in such a project. Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Senior of Education for Microsoft Latin America, Luciano Braverman. Thank you very much for your words with regards to the importance of partnerships, as well as digital skills and importance to adopt technological changes worldwide. Now, we will also listen to the other partner of IICA in this work, Maria Caridad Arajo, Head of Gender and Diversity Division from IDB. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you for your invitation. Good morning to all our distinguished panelists of today. It is an honor to be part of this group. And I'm also very pleased to be able to be working together with IICA and Microsoft, in this case, the outcome of this partnership and collaboration. I am very glad to see that we are all headed the same way and that we are all trying to close the gaps that characterize the rural sector, and within these, the disadvantages and the gaps that women face, and within this group of women who are also facing more disadvantages due to their ethnic or geographical localization or level of education, etc. We're talking about the groups that are most highly excluded in our region, an area where inequality is unacceptably high. So we are here all because of a very important cause. This year of economic crisis and pandemic has also highlighted the inequalities of the region. And in many ways, women have been harshly hit by the pandemic. The women in the rural areas have also experienced an additional burden, not only in terms of their work and the agriculture, but also in terms of caring for other adults and children who were not able to attend school, for example. And everybody has been harshly impacted economically because of the crisis. Some companies have closed in the rural area, and they have been having a hard time joining other other industries because of technological gaps. So from IDB, we are working on this as a priority in trying to help economic recovery, and we want us to recover society in such a way that the participation gaps and economic gaps for women in economy and in the industry are closed. The participation of women should be at the heart of the economic recovery of our region. And based on that, IDB is promoting an agenda based on 3 pillars. All 3 of them are closely related to what joins us here today: connectivity and technological needs. The first pillar for economic recovery would be support to companies. A support that can also be not only in terms of incentive, so that they can have a greater participation of women, wage equality, and a larger participation of women in leadership roles. The second pillar of our work has to do with skills. Skills, not only in terms of digital skills, but the upskilling and reskilling, where we are undergoing many transitions in the job market. One key for rural women is placing emphasis on climate change and fostering green jobs in the rural areas in our region. And the third pillar of our job, of what we do for economic recovery with a gender perspective, has to do with regulations that throughout time have become barriers for labor participation of women in formal and high quality jobs. So in that agenda, the 3-pillar agenda, in which access to technology, and not only access to technology, but also the effective use of said technologies is key for the transition towards jobs in the future that will translate into more prosperity for our communities and more equality for all. So thank you all, and I'm very excited because I want to hear the outcomes of the study. Thank you very much. Head of Gender and Diversity Division of IDB, Maria Caridad Araujo, who highlighted that the report has to do with economic recovery and the participation of women in the job market, among other things. So now we will listen to Sandra Ziegler, the IICA's consultant, who I already mentioned, and she will be making the presentation of the report, Digital Literacy in Rural Areas, an Indispensable Condition to Bridge the Divide in Latin America and the Caribbean. She carried out a previous report, and now she's in charge of this new report. So Sandra, welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Katiuska. Good morning. It is a great honor to be able to present this report that was launched in collaboration with IICA, IDB, and Microsoft that has to do with the development of digital literacy in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we're going to share a presentation with you. Would it be possible for you to share the screen, please? So let's go to the next slide, please. This slide, before we talked about the report in itself, I would like to mention two important background issues that were important, that were already mentioned before, and were carried out on October last year. The study or the report on the digital inequality, gender digital inequality in Latin America and the Caribbean, because this leads in terms not only of personal and family level, but it's on the productive level that women carry out in the field. Let me highlight the importance of the outcomes of this study today, which is the Women's International Day. And the other document that you see in this slide has to do with rural connectivity in Latin America and the Caribbean. We measure through the study the status of significant connectivity. This means frequency and quality of access, and the gaps that exist between the rural and urban areas. In this study, we also characterize the different problems that exist in terms of connectivity in rural areas. So the document that we'll be presenting today will be talking about the importance or the problem that we have in digital skills that is oftentimes neglected because the obstacles and barriers to connectivity and structure is seen as a greater priority. But without a doubt, in rural areas, these are issues that have to be tackled simultaneously. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Which are the reasons for talking about digital skills in rural areas? What have been the reasons behind this study? Well, first of all, we think that access to connectivity is necessary for the arrival of technology, but it's not enough. We also think that it's necessary for populations to have the knowledge and the skills to handle said resources and to also seize the opportunities that said technologies can provide in the rural areas to potentialize the use of digitization and in food systems and agriculture. Secondly, it is important to talk about digital skills because we are undergoing a worldwide transformation moment in terms of digital and technology. These skills obey the need to requalify labor, prepare this labor for the emerging job market, and also collaborate in the technological leap according to the needs that organizations may have nowadays, as well as the job market. So this is a change that implies the inclusion of concrete digital skills and also soft skills, being able to solve problems, like being flexible, being able to continue learning and collaborate, etc. So this is not only a matter of incorporating tools, but also of the possibility of transforming what we do with them. And in fact, to make access to technologies a universal thing will not guarantee its full and reflective use. So we need to develop these digital skills to develop other capacities that will allow us to have a qualitative leap in their use. Next one, please. Within the framework of this study, we gather some sources of information that see the connection between the impact of digital skills on productivity. As you can see in the slide, we have some data developed by OECD to show the links between digital skills or literacy and increase in productivity. And as we can see here, the higher the skills are, the higher the increase in productivity. Next one, please. In this chart, which was developed based on information from the telecommunications network, We have information for a number of countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. In green, you can see the data that from the urban areas. In green, data from the rural areas. And we can see first the gap between the use, a number of certain technologies and the digital attitude in itself. There is a big gap between the urban and rural areas. And we can also see that the most frequent use has to do with the development of the common tasks like copy and move files, use tools for copy and pasting, and then we have others that are not as much used. We have to do with programming. In some cases, the difference is twofolded. In the case of the rural compared to the in the urban compared to the rural area, and sometimes it's even the difference is even greater. Next one, please. Digital skills and their development are closely related to the education opportunities of rural inhabitants. So it's very important for their support, and writing and mathematics are also very important for their deployment. So here I'm going to share some information that has to do with the situation of the rural area in Latin America and the Caribbean. If you look at the left side, panel A, you see the difference that we have outside of school in the rural and urban areas. In orange, we have Latin America and the Caribbean. The triangles represent access to ITCs in urban areas, and then the rectangles are in the rural areas. So you can see the gaps and the differences in the use of ITCs in the rural areas and the urban areas in the region, and mainly also in the use, because the use is mostly for social media and communications via chat. And then I'm going to talk more about this. And then in the next slide, we have access to ITCs and the difference that we see when they are in school. So we see that there is a gap in Latin America and the Caribbean in this sense, but it's not as much as in terms of ITCs being used outside of school. So schools have a huge potential to provide access, opportunities of use, and development of ITCs in the rural areas. And last year, with the crisis of COVID-19 and the closing of schools, we were able to experience this situation when kids had to access school through their homes, and the lack of technological tools widened the inequalities and the gaps in terms of access to schooling. So if we move on to the next slide, we can see some data having to do with access to abilities to use internet. We can see that almost 38% said that they don't know how to use the internet. 26% of the rural population that was surveyed said that they don't know what it is. And 12.4% said that they are not interested in using it or having access to the internet. So this shows us that we are faced with a clear problem in terms of the knowledge and the knowledge of use of said technologies. So we don't only face with problems of infrastructure, but also problems to access knowledge and effective use of technology. And here we can also see a 13.5% says that they don't have access to a device, but the presence of obstacles related to not knowing how to use it, lack of interest, or not knowing even what it is are closely related.
In the framework of this report, we come back to a series of studies on digital skills in the rural environment that we have systematized. Here we will summarize some of the main findings. First of all, these studies undertaken so far in the region show that the use of internet is more frequent among people that have a higher schooling level. Those that, as I say, have more schooling, more education, those that have come from more favorable economic environments, those that work in more skilled jobs and have the technological tools. This is the group that is focusing, attracting most of those that are more prone to using technology. We also see a differentiated utilization and access depending on gender. It is worth highlighting that girls approximately 5 basis points more prone than boys to use a digital device for the first time between the age of 10 and 12 years, whereas boys have 5 basis points more likelihood than girls to use digital devices for the first time between the ages of 4 and 6 years. So between 10 and 12 years girls and between 4 and 6 years in average boys. We must highlight, based on this difference, that early exposure to devices has a positive correlation with positive results in basically the learning of people at the age of 15. Girls are at a disadvantage because their access to these devices occurs later in their lives. Another important piece of evidence is that boys and youngsters in rural homes are the ones that promote the use of technologies and are the most frequent users. Schools, particularly secondary schools, are an incentive to use the internet. Many studies gather this evidence in the sense that the youth is the entryway for the arrival of technology to rural areas. Progression in the incorporation of technologies, according to the studies, follows the following system. Basically, it starts basically with for leisure and free time, and then later for more systematic learning purposes. But in this order, it's worth highlighting that leisure and spare time usage basically is a good step for digital literacy. At the same time, the lack of digital skills, according to the studies, become a limitation among those that express they do not use these technologies. And there are technologies that are not found to be useful in many areas. And lastly, we must highlight the COVID-19 issue has accelerated the use of technologies, particularly in this niche that develops e-commerce in the rural world, as we will see in the next slide. Next, please. In the framework of our report, we have examined many cases in different countries of the region. In the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and strategies. We see training programs in digital areas in rural contexts. The analysis of these cases allowed us to identify a large number of strategies. And should I stop sharing the screen? I see we are having some audio problems. Okay, here we go. These cases allowed us to examine the situation, and with this, we have classified 7 possible strategies. These were the strategies we identified based on all the cases reviewed. First of all, we have initiatives to strengthen the communities, to foster digitalization and technological skills. The project like Connected Women by Fundación Albina IDB Lab and Fundación Gran Chaco. This is a very good example. This is focused on women and young girls and indigenous women. Secondly, we have a group of strategies developed focused on agricultural e-commerce. Basically, we have seen these models that allow to connect farmers and producers directly with buyers through platforms. Thirdly, we have identified strategies linked to developing digital skills for the 4.0 industry and employability to seek the digital skills and their training. There are several programs. One of those, the Global Skill Initiative by Microsoft, focused on the more vulnerable population. They provide free of charge courses to training these digital skills, obviously including the rural population, as well as other programs that are guided by Microsoft towards professional training or digital skills at the university level. Fourthly, we have strategies developed focused on smart farming. Smart farming is linked to the use of drones, satellites, sensors that produce and transmit data on crops, animals, natural resources, and different practices in agriculture and farming. So all of these strategies use big data, and we could mention programs like that developed by IICA together with the European Union to develop the Central American integrated coffee rust management program recently developed by IICA, the European Union, and other organizations and entities. PROCAHICA, as it is known. Fifth, we have the development of specialized digital consultancy that was mentioned by Manuel Otero. The activities developed by PAD and IICA at the Ministry of Agriculture of Brazil to develop precision agriculture. This type of consultancy work allows that through cellular telephony, we can provide information and work facilitating the work of extension workers, working together with producers to strengthen their work. There are other apps developed as the AgriX app developed by IICA, which allows to work with big data and to have an application particularly to examine climate-related issues. In sixth place, we can mention the development and the search for solutions to foster rural digitalization through hackathons, for example, basically inviting to participate in solving problems focused on agriculture in specific contexts. And lastly, we have the strategy identified through the making available competitive funds. This basically attracts small farmers to encourage rural development. These are competitive funds to seek the best digital technologies focused on the agri-food area. These strategies were the ones that are being used in the region currently to produce these digital skills in rural areas. We want to make these cases much more visible and take this up throughout the entire region. Next slide, please. As to recommendations resulting from this document or report, we can see the first three that basically reflect the need to encourage training programs that are sensitive to inequality issues in the region and the diversity of the rural population. And for that, we need to address this subject matter of digital skills by segmenting the recipients of these technologies. We must think of different ways to attract indigenous population, women, youth. They all require different options at the time of gaining these digital skills. It is also necessary to encourage the creation of local content, both from the government as well as in partnership with the private sector to encourage learning and at the same time respect cultural diversity in the region. The supply of resources can also be a driver for demand and the development of these skills. It is necessary to encourage the arrival of digital technology through formal education, as we were mentioning earlier. We must encourage the states to maintain ICT efforts to give the qualified resources to the young population to ensure there is a continuation of agriculture in the rural areas. It is easier to work through the youth, and we must contribute to closing the digital gap and affordability of devices. There is a problem of resources and affordability. So this is a severe limitation that prevents developing these skills in the region. And two last recommendations are the need to produce impact assessments of these digital skill formation initiatives and building stable partnerships. These initiatives, like the one I showed in the previous slide, all of this is necessary, and we need to measure the results, measure the impacts to determine the best routes to focus our efforts in forthcoming years. And lastly, to support studies on digital skills in the rural area. Here we have identified some data available, but this is still limited. We need further evidence through these studies, because this will be the way to develop policies and initiatives that foster the development of digital skills in the region. And lastly, we invite you to read this report in greater detail. This has been a very brief summary of the great amount of information included, but we believe this is crucial to move forward with policies in forthcoming years. And as of now, we thank you very much for your attention. We would like to thank Sandra Ziegler for highlighting all the gaps and divisions in rural and urban areas. And you mentioned very interesting recommendations to begin closing this or bridging this digital divide in agriculture. Thank you very much for outstanding research, Sandra. Now we will have a series of journalists that have questions for Sandra Ziegler. Natalia Viera, journalist of América Economía Chile, the floor is yours. Natalia, are you here? Well, I think we will move to Marisol Anton, El Cronista, Argentina. Marisol. I think we are having minor issues with our journalists. Federico Villarreal, Director of Technical Cooperation of IICA, has some comments about this important report. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to greet all women also on International Women's Day, and it is very important to celebrate today the role and the need for greater equality. The consolidation of this partnership with IDB and Microsoft, no doubt, is evidence of firm steps in the right direction, because together we enable our abilities to identify relevant matters for a social, labor, and productive world that we are already moving into and that very soon will be further consolidated. Precisely, we work very hard, very well, and truly committed to social and economic inclusion of farmers in general, and family farmers particularly. The study, or the report, as Sandra very clearly mentioned, describes the fundamental contributions and an accurate and clear diagnosis, which is a very relevant contribution of data and analyses of these data, and contribute very good and a lot of information as well as recommendations, concrete recommendations to develop strategies for the adoption of rural digital literacy skills to face this diagnosis, which is a necessary, urgent scenario for the inclusion of agriculture in digital transformation processes that we are experiencing. As Dr. Otero mentioned at the beginning, during the opening of this event, and as Sandra added, the development of these digital skills is a priority, no doubt about this. But to address the use of technologies and the needs for training of those that live in rural territories are key elements, fundamental to move forward directly and concretely, precisely, to move forward. These skills are fundamental to accelerate changes that are ever greater. We also heard this in our opening remarks. The acceleration of these changes require urgent work and participation of international organizations, governments, and each of the actors and protagonists in productive systems to work on connectivity and digital skills and digital literacy is to act today, but thinking of the immediate future, but also act today in the immediate future, as was mentioned by Maria Caridad, because it significantly contributes to the economic reactivation caused by COVID crisis that we are currently living through. Due to all of these reasons, it is a priority to continue working even harder than we have been doing. In 6 months, and in ending, we will be holding the Food Systems Summit, and this change, no doubt, cannot ignore the need to increase and improve connectivity and digital literacy. Digital agriculture is a condition already where we must work on today to advance in a more equitable society. The digital world is fundamental, a part of equality in the future, and not only in the future, but of the present, as we saw in the report very clearly. And the work done precisely highlight that and show the same direction. This, no doubt, is IICA's commitment to agriculture and the rural world. And we are very proud and happy to be able to do this together with partners, such good partners as are Microsoft and the IDB. Thank you very much. I thank the Director of Technical Cooperation of Costa Rica, Federico Villarreal, for mentioning that digital technologies are the future of the present, in fact. Thank you very much. We thank you. We would like to thank IICA, particularly its Director General, Manuel Lotero, as well as the Minister of Agriculture of Guyana, Sulchika Mustafa, the Secretary of Family Agriculture and Cooperatives, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Supply of Brazil, Fernando Schrank, and the Senior Director of Education for Microsoft Latin America, Luciano Braverman, and the Head of Gender and Diversity Division, IDB, Maria Caridad Araujo, for your partnership. And we would like to thank all the participants very much. And once again, thank you and congratulations on International Women's Day. Thank you very much.